Hello, my friends. This is the second in a series of videos on vibrational compatibility. This series of videos that I'm making in June 2023 goes into the most detail that I've ever gone into before on how to do compatibility, and it's using these new methods and tools for compatibility. So this is very exciting new development in vibrational astrology to elevate and improve our ability to do compatibility to this next level. And what we're looking at here is the strongest vibrations in the compatibility between Johannes Kepler and me on the left side. I've copied and pasted all the vibrations that score 400 or more in this listing provided in the Series 4.0 software. In the first video in this series, I explain how to bring up this listing. And on the right are the vibrations that are strongest for Johannes Kepler. And we have a cutoff of 400 or higher for compatibility, 300 or higher for individuals. So we look at these two lists. As I explained in the first video in this series, we're interested in vibrations that score extremely high, like in the compatibility, 29 times 9, the 261 vibration has a score of 540. That's a lot higher than these others. It stands out. And also themes. We noticed, for example, that for the compatibility of Johannes Kepler and myself, there's a 7 times 7 times 3, a 7 times 4. Also 11 times 7 has some similarity with these other two, the 7 times 7 times 3 and the 7 times 4. So there's this 7 theme repeating in high vibrations. So those are two things we noticed in the compatibility. Now we want to see what's strong in Johannes Kepler. After we do that, we'll see what's strong in my chart. Are there any of these important vibrations, the 29 times 9 and the 11 times 7 times 3, the 7 times 7 times 3, and the 7 times 4? Those are the ones we identified as being particularly important. If you're not clear about why I've skipped over the 167 times 2, 277, the reason is because those are higher vibrations we don't completely understand, and we're going to stick to the things that we really understand very well. I discussed that towards the end of the first video in this series of videos. Now, what is strong for Kepler? We see 211. We see 97 times 3, 37. Now, there's a basic vibration that we understand. And there's the 11 times 7 times 3. You might notice that 11 times 7 times 3 is also on the left side. So the software yet does not put together these lists next to each other and identify what's similar between them. But if you look through and you compare among the ones that we're interested in, I've highlighted on the next slide. Let's look at it. It's the 11 times 7 times 3. That's the one that stood out to me. Now, maybe I'm overlooking something, but I'm not seeing among these fundamental vibrations any other connections between these two lists. So this tells me something extremely important. We have reached our conclusion, something that is extremely important. I've got it highlighted in the bottom, at the bottom of the slide. Kepler brings only 11 times 7 times 3 vibe to the relationship. So what's happening is, in our relationship, I'm connecting to Kepler's 11 times 7 times 3. In other words, it's very simple. On the right side, it's telling us Kepler has very strong 11 times 7 times 3 vibration. And in the compatibility, that same vibration is strong. That means that I'm connecting to his 11 times 7 times 3. He's got it strong, and I connect with it. This is what you'll find out in the compatibility. Are you latching on, bonding with something that's important in that person? The answer is yes, and it's one vibration. I'm not seeing any others that are strong. Now let's do it to me. Let's see if there's something strong in me that Kepler is connecting to. And I ran the software to get the highest vibrations. I don't need to run it again. I showed that in the first part, how we bring up the the compatibility vibration and how we bring up the individual strong vibrations. I already showed that, but we don't need to keep showing that over and over again. I just ran that, copied and pasted it. There are only 5 vibrations that I have that are very strong. A 189, which is 7 times 3 times 3 times 3, 43 times 3, 131, 67 times 5, and 43 times 5. Those are the ones that come up as 300 or stronger. Now we do the same exact thing, and we look to see if do we see any vibrations that are similar. They don't have to be identical like they were for Kepler and our compatibility, whereas identically 11 times 7 times 3. Do we see anything similar on the left and right? You might have to look for a little while and see what shows up. And what I noticed is there are no vibrations that David clearly brings to the relationship, but there are some general tones. So we don't see exactly the same vibe like we did for Kepler and the relationship, the 11 times 7 times 3, but we do notice that I have the 7 times 3 times 3 times 3, and in the relationship, there's a 7 times 4 and a 7 times 7 times 3. They're kind of similar. I mean, they are similar. They're not extremely similar. If, for example, there was a 7 times 3 on the left, or a 7 times 3 times 3, that would be like more similar. But this is 7 times 7 times 3. So there's some similarity. You could say maybe 20%, 30% similarity. So I have the strong 7, and there is a strong 7 in the relationship. So we're getting this tone of 7-ness. So I have strong 7. There's a strong 7 quality in the relationship. So what we can say is there's a general tone of 7, but not a crystal clear connection. So that's what's going on. When there's a crystal clear connection, let's go back to that crystal clear connection. There it is. Kepler has 11 times 7 times 3. The relationship has exactly the same vibration. 11 times 7 times 3, bam, that makes for a clear spark. Straightforward. So this is fabulous. You can go into the relationship, and when you see exactly the same vibe in the individual, in the relationship, that means that the other person has like a direct connection to that. I have a direct connection into Kepler's 11 times 7 times 3. That means that he can take me into his 11 times 7 times 3 world. So you see who is entering into whose world. I'm entering into Kepler's 11 times 7 times 3. He has it strong, and I connect with it. And so obviously it can go either way. As I said in part 1, the vibration that's strong in the relationship might be strong for both people, one of the people, or neither of them. It might be something that emerges out of the relationship, and you develop a kind of awareness and a way of being that neither of you has, but it develops in the relationship. It's like two people that fall in love that have very little in common. It's kind of mysterious. Like, why are they falling in love? This can happen because you can get that vibration created between them. In a way, you might say there's advantages and disadvantages for a long-term relationship. It's nice to be able to have something that you both have strong and that you share. For a teacher-student or an influencer, we could call Kepler the influencer. It's good if the person being influenced is tying into something of the influencer, which is exactly what's happening here. It's exactly what we tend to suspect might be happening with the influencer, that I have gotten influenced by Kepler's 11 times 7 times 3. Now, we're going to see what exactly is Kepler's 11 times 7 times 3, and then we've discovered how I've been brought into his world. So this is really exciting. You're going to look at the charts of your influencers, we can call them, people that have sparked something in you, and see what you've been drawn into and how you've been drawn into it and how that's opened up new ways of understanding and experiencing life. Okay, so here we see the connection of me to the relationship, and the conclusion, there's not a crystal clear connection, but a general 7 quality. For a relationship that's an influencer and the person influenced, which is clearly the case because Kepler died over 400 years ago, so I can't influence him. I mean, you could get metaphysical about it and maybe argue, whatever. But in practical, everyday terms, he's deceased and has had a huge impact on me. It's a very clear influencer and influenced person, like a student, like a teacher-student sort of thing. So there we have it. And the general 7 tone, that is helpful. It's good to have more connections. So what we're really interested in is this 11 times 7 times 3. Kepler is strongly influencing me with his strong 11 times 7 times 3 vibration. That's the conclusion. Now let's understand what that influence is. We're now ready to analyze and interpret the details of this connection. Okay. There is, however, even one more additional thing that we can do before we dive in. I'll show that here, which is that we're going to show the vibrations very clearly of what is connecting Kepler and myself, and we've highlighted them here. So the 29 times 9 is the strongest, and we understand what 29 is, we understand what 9 is, and then these 3. We already talked about this. These are the big 4 connections. On the next slide, we see how high each of these vibrations is for both people, so we can organize this. I normally don't do this, but for teaching purposes, I've organized it very clearly to show exactly what's going on, that of those 4 vibrations, just to make it clear what we're doing, we're interested in these 4 vibrations. I explained that in part 1 of this series of videos. Of these 4 vibrations, it's the 11 times 7 times 3 that's strong. It's strong for Kepler. And if I want to get really super thorough about this, so in this series of videos, I'm showing you the complete, totally thorough analysis. I want to understand everything. Maybe that 11 times 7 times 3 is not in my very, very highest vibrations, but what if it was just down a little bit and my cutoff didn't find it? So I can go through the listing of vibrations and find it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'll go into my listing of vibrations and I'm going to find my 231 vibration. Let's go back into the Sirius software and let's pull up my chart. There's my chart, and I've already selected my profile category scores. So what I want to do, let me go back to the PowerPoint for a second. I want to find how strong 231 is for me, because we already know it's not one of my strongest vibrations, but is it reasonably strong or is it really weak? I can see exactly how the 2 people are connected to the vibrations that are primary in their relationship. This will become clear when I show you the listing. I want to look at 231 vibration in my listing. Back to the Kepler listing. This is where this first part of the listing is useful. I'm going to go down to 231. Harmonic, or we call them vibrations, 231 is the 159th strongest vibration of 360. So 180 would be halfway. 159 is like slightly better than average. It's just an average vibration for me, not particularly strong. So going back to my PowerPoint, it's showing it's 159. 132, out of 360, it's not up near the top. These two are actually very low for me. Very, very low. They're towards the bottom of the list. The only one that stands out is that 11 times 7 times 3 is the fourth highest vibration for Kepler. So if you wanted to look at this in great detail, you can make this table for the relationship. We covered in the first video in the series that you select these listings, you pick out the vibrations that are important in the relationship, and then you can go back to the individual listings and see exactly how strong they are. Now, typically, if I'm doing a compatibility kind of reading, an analysis of people, I'm not going to go into this much detail. But if you have the time, you can do it. At some point, maybe we'll add the features to the software to produce this table. So it'll pick out these vibrations, show you how strong they are for each person, and then you don't have to go through them. We made a huge breakthrough with this feature of the software. Every time we make a breakthrough, we discover the next level of how we can improve it to make it even more streamlined and faster to use. Bottom line is 11 times 7 times 3 is clearly, without a doubt, the connection between me and Kepler. It stands out. Nothing else comes close. The 7 times 7 times 3 is 95th strongest for Kepler. It's not up near the top. That's the next closest one. So that's it. This list confirms, as I've gotten bold here at the bottom of this slide, this is the critical conclusion. This list, this table that we're looking at, confirms that only the 11 times 7 times 3 vibe is very strong in the relationship of at least one of the natal charts. So this is the way in which he influences me. Now you may say, wow, Johannes Kepler is such a big impact in your life, and you only connect on this one vibration that's also strong for Kepler. It's the only thing that you might say, latching on to, bonding to. Wow, I would have thought there might be more. Well, it only takes one strong vibrational connection is all it takes, and that's what I'm going to show you now. Okay, so let's see what this connection is. Now we're at last getting to the heart of exactly what's going on between me and Johannes Kepler, why he's such a important person for me and a big influencer, I think is a good term for it. So he has strong 11 times 7 times 3. What do we expect to see? That means that when we look at Kepler's 11 times 7 vibrational chart, 77 vibration chart, we're going to expect to see a lot of trines, because that's how these vibrational charts work. We don't have to look at the 11 times 7 times 3. It's actually easier to look at the 77 vibration chart and see the trines. You're getting a clearer, more fundamental view of what's going on. And so, and then secondly, we're going to see how I connect to those. So let's verify the first of these points. First, we want to see Kepler's 11 times 7 chart, his 77 vibe chart, and then we're going to do a bi-wheel of his 77 vibe and my 77 vibe, and we will see what this big connection is. This is the connection. It's not so much what his sun, moon, and rising sign are and what my signs are. We did this whole marriage compatibility. We found out signs are not the big thing. It's these beautiful, intricate, vibrational patterns that have never been understood, never been known before. This is a big step for astrology. Okay, let's look at it. Let's look at his 77 vibration chart. Let's look at it in the software. Let me go back here. Let's close this, and here's Johannes Kepler 77 vibration chart. There it is. This is the chart, Kepler 77 vibration chart, that has sucked me in. This is the magnet. This is the thing that has drawn me into his world. And as expected, it's huge, huge. Conjunction of two planets, and a third planet. I mean, the third point of the triangle. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets. Now, you're not always going to see a grand trine. You might see, 4 planets conjunct, trine a fifth one. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. All we know is that there's some trine stuff going on here, and this is it. So when we look at it more closely, we'll notice Mars at 7 degrees, Uranus at 8 degrees, Mercury at 9 degrees. So that's very, very tight. The Mars, Uranus, Mercury spreads only 2 degrees, but Neptune's strongly involved because you can go 5, 7, 8. So Neptune to Uranus it's actually only a little bit over 2 degrees. The whole thing is pretty darn tight. And then 2 degrees more, a little, 2 or 2.5 degrees beyond Mercury is Pluto. So in other words, you have 5 degrees, 7, 8, 9, 11. All of them are within orb. So this is the big thing. Let's see if I have a slide. I don't remember that explains what it means. If not, I'll explain it. So, as I said, the Mercury, Uranus, Pluto grand trine is extremely tight. All 3 of those are within 2 degrees. So this configuration, 5 planets tightly connected, is an important key to understanding Kepler. And what is it? All of you watching this are students of astrology. Mercury, Uranus, Pluto? Discovery, scientific discovery. Okay, I break it down here, which is good because I like to have notes rather than improvise everything all the time. The feeling of freedom, 11. 11 is this wanting to move, wanting to feel free, wanting to get on to the next thing. Through mastery and attunement, that's 7. What 77 vibe does is you can have a great feeling of freedom by mastering the pattern, by mastering the discipline. For example, suppose you're learning to play guitar. Well, when you first learn, you can't even hold your fingers down. It doesn't sound nice. Then you learn how to play it nicely. Then maybe you learn a second chord, and then it starts to flow. It's like, wow, this is fun. Da, 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 da. And when you get to that next thing and it flows together, there's a feeling of, wow, this is so beautiful. If you've been in a choir and everybody's in tune and balanced, and oh my God, there's something liberating. Like you feel you've been released from a cage. And what has released you? The discipline. It seems contradictory. By not being loose and free, by getting that ritual, that flow, mastering it, focusing, 7, discipline, concentrate, go within, get it right, all of a sudden you're released. That is the experience of 77. That's what it means. So Kepler's enthusiasm when he makes his discoveries, when he discovers that planets travel in elliptical paths, I didn't quote it here, but he goes on and on about he's stolen the vessel from blah, 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 from ancient Egypt. He's in some kind of ecstatic wonderment by understanding that the planets move through this ritual, through this pre-designed system that can be mathematically calculated. That might seem actually kind of boring, that the planets are just following this formula. But to him, he feels like he's been released into the mind of God, which is part of his motivation. So this is the 7 times 11 through that persistence, that focus, that working mostly on his own into this, and then feeling released through it. And what is it? It's Mercury, Uranus, Pluto. The feeling of freedom through mastery and attunement to a pattern, discipline, ritual, or practice. That's 77 vibe. Through an inspired vision, Neptune's involved, and spontaneous, obsessive thinking. And I've got the planets there. Spontaneous Uranus, obsessive Pluto, thinking that solves a problem and applies the ideas is what Kepler's life work was all about. Applying ideas to solve problems, that's Mercury, Mars. That's what Mars does. I have these videos on the meanings of planetary pairs. This is Johannes Kepler. This is why he made his discoveries. It's in his 77 vibration. Who would have ever imagined this? I mean, when I started studying astrology, I had no idea I'd be going up into these intricate patterns. It's just what we've discovered. It's so fascinating. The 11 times, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm actually sharing with you the world of 77. All of this programming, all of this analyzing of data, and how it enlivens, is enthusiastic. 77 vibe people get very excited about their little quiet nerdy stuff. They feel freed through it. So that's what Kepler did. This is what helped him. This is what enabled these discoveries. This was the energy flow of the discoveries. And I get sucked into it. I learn about Johannes Kepler. I am connected to him through this. So I enter into his world of enthusiasm. And you get actually not reprogrammed. You're programming. Your basic energetic functions are general forces, and they take form through your experiences, and they take form through the people you connect with. Our history, our heritage, our ancestors, everything that we receive, they carved the grooves for the expression of these energies. And when you connect with them, you go on their roadway. They've built a road through the jungle, and you are on that road with them. You get taken on that journey. So Kepler takes me on his journey. Well, you have to give credit to the student as well. They saw it. They experience it. And they get excited about it. It doesn't do any good if that person has created a journey and nobody can get on board. But he's on a train, and I get on that train with him. And each one of us is influenced. We are the students, receivers, and then we in turn pass that on to everybody else. Even if we don't intend to, even if we're not teachers, even if we're not famous, even if we're not conscious influencers. Whatever we do is we're following a pathway that others can jump on our train. So it's a train that gets picked up by generation after generation after generation. So this is the train. This is the chariot, whatever image you want to have that Kepler was on. I jump on that train and continue with the 77 vibe process. This is what the connection is. This is what is happening. Now let's look at the bi-wheel of my 77 with Kepler. So here we have, let's go back. We didn't do it yet. Let's look at the bi-wheel. Sorry for flipping around there. Let's look at the bi-wheel of the 77 vibration chart to see. Oh, right. I'm getting mixed up here. I'm getting maybe too excited. Here, I have it here in the series software. Here's his chart. Now we do the bi-wheel. We put my chart on my 77 vibe around, and we see, do I have planets that land on these 3 points of about 8 degrees of water signs? if I have planets on 8 degrees of water signs, then I am brought into this. Kepler has 5 planets. We know I don't have 5 planets closely connected because my 77 times 3 vibe is not very strong. We already saw that in the listing. But maybe I have 2. If I have only 1 planet, okay, I connect a little bit. But if I have 2, the more planets and the tighter they are, the more that you are naturally and easily sucked into this energy flow. This is why one person loves this singer, another person loves this singer. They connect on it, and that connection is meaningful and important to them. There's more than the astrology. There's the character, the integrity, the history. But if you connect, and your interests and values also connect, you're brought on that train. You hop on the train. So in the bi-wheel, let's look at it now. Bi-wheel with, let's see, I've got a bunch of stuff here. Is it this one that I want? Kepler 77, David 77. Yes, this is it. This is the bi-wheel. Kepler 77 in the inner ring, David, me, in the outer ring, 77. And you can look at this and you'll see that my Saturn, let's go up here in this 11th house, my Saturn at 7 degrees Pisces is right in the middle of his Mercury and Neptune. It's trining his Uranus. It's very tightly trining his Mars. And more weakly trine his Pluto. My Saturn connects. My Mars at 11 degrees also connects. 3 degrees for conjunction is tight. My Mars is on his Uranus. My Mars is trine his Mercury. My Mars to his Neptune is out of orb, so they're not all there, because we allow a 5 degree 20-minute orb maximum orb. We want really half of that in compatibility to be really strong. And my Mars is trine his Mars, but very weakly. So my Mars is also involved, very tight to his Uranus and his Mercury and Neptune, or his Neptune. My Mars is on his, very tight to his Uranus, tight trine to his Mercury, and tight trine to his Pluto. So my Mars is aspecting 3 of his 5 planets tightly. My Saturn is aspecting all 5 of them. So I have a Mars trine Saturn. I have a Mars trine Saturn in the 77 vibe. Is that the most important thing in the world for me? No. It's just a trine. We can look and see if I have other planets at 7 degrees or something that gets pulled into this. But that's why he's such a big influencer, that I'm brought into his world. My 77's not strong. His is, but I happen to have 2 planets, and this opens a door. This shows you the power of how, for example, a teacher could awaken an interest in literature, in history, in mathematics, in chemistry, in music, in painting, whatever it might be. The student may have a modest interest in that, and they take a certain class, and it opens up that world. It opens it up. Now, if that's not super strong for you, you're not going to become exceptional at it, because it's not the incredibly strong thing. But it helps to open up doors, open up awarenesses into things. And he opens me up into his world of discovery. I have my own discovery things, but that's an 11 vibration. It's a different vibration. But I'm connected to Kepler through this. This is the lineage that I tie into. Okay, so we found it. We found out that Johannes Kepler's genius is largely in his 77 vibration, and I have a connection to it. If you have a connection to the configuration in a brilliant person's chart, creative person's chart, some influencer for whatever reason, if you connect to that, to what is making them have that special quality, you are easily drawn into it. You're easily drawn, as long as the values and orientation and basic concepts are not offensive to you, you are taken for that ride. You don't forget it. I mean, everybody learns about Johannes Kepler in school, but how many people build their lives around it? You have at least 2 planets, that's what can happen. Okay, now let's go back to our PowerPoint. And here I've highlighted it. I've just highlighted to make it crystal clear what we're talking about. There's my Mars trine Saturn on that configuration. So my Mars and Saturn are on Kepler's Grand Trine. Now, what's amazing about this is interpret the planets. What does Mars trine Saturn mean? It means getting down to business. Let's do it. Let's get down and do it. The hard work. I work hard at continuing the lineage of ideas and discoveries from Kepler. All this programming, all this debugging, all this data. It's stunning. You will see exactly what's happening. With this trine in my chart on Kepler's 5-planet Grand Trine, I am brought into the vortex of this energy. The people we connect with, even through books, develop the patterns in our lives. Now, this in itself is not that stunning to have only 2 planets connected. There's a second way in which Kepler and I are connected in 77 vibration. It's the combination of 2 connections between us that makes this magical. Just having this one connection, yeah, that's impressive. But a lot of people are going to have 2 planets on this Grand Trine, and they're not all going to become Kepler aficionados, build their life around it. We're expecting even more. We have a saying in vibrational astrology, exceptional behaviors or exceptional traits require exceptional planetary configurations. The astrology should work simple and straightforward. This is important, but it doesn't reflect the extent to which Kepler has influenced me. There's a second connection. There it is. There's 2 things that are happening. When we look at 8 degrees, let me show it to you in the program before I highlight it. When we see things at around 8 degrees, a good thing to do is to look at 7 to 11, because this Grand Trine of Kepler spreads from actually 5. This Neptune's almost at 6. Let's call it 6 degrees. Starts at 6 degrees and ends at 11 and a half. So 6 to 11 degrees, we'll call it, right in that range. Does Kepler have more planets there? Because that would make for squares or other aspects. It would connect into the configuration. Well, his moon is at 10. Let's see, only his moon. His moon is Saturn, is a little off, 13. I really want to stick to 6 to 11. So his moon gets involved with this. His moon, for example, is square his Mercury. His moon, well, it's mainly just the square to Mercury. His moon, it'd be quincunx, but it's very, very weak. It's primarily just the square to Mercury. So his moon comes in and squares his Mercury. And now, interestingly, do I have anything at 6 to 11 degrees? I have a ton of stuff. My Sun and Pluto are conjunct his moon at 8 and 9, and therefore, and my moon is at 11. I have a Sun-Pluto moon aspecting his moon. Oh my God. Let me say that again. My Sun and Pluto are very tightly conjunct his moon and tightly conjunct my moon. That means I have a Sun-Moon trine on his moon. Wow. 3 of what we call the lights, Sun and Moon we sometimes call the lights, 3 of the 4 lights are connected together. Now we have a rule, same planet to same planet is extremely powerful. We have a moon-moon trine. In fact, it's exact. It's like a 5-minute orb. His moon is 10 Sag 05. Mine is 10 Aries 10. Now the moon is moving very fast. If our birth times are off a little bit, those orbs will get bigger. But if both of our birth times are accurate, we have a moon trine plus my sun on his moon, and just for added measure, Pluto as well. And that's what I'm showing in the PowerPoint. I put it in light blue just to differentiate it from the yellow highlight. My sun and Pluto are trine my moon and conjunct his moon, which also means that my moon is square his Mars, and this sun, Pluto, and moon are square some of these planets, like my Saturn and his Mercury. So it's bringing more aspects into this. Planets, let me explain it like this. We have, between Kepler and I, both moons, my sun and my Pluto. This is a sun-moon thing. When you have the sun and moon connected, 3 of the 4 planets connected, it creates a friendship. It creates a feeling of history with each other. You meet somebody, you feel like you've always known them. They're family. I'm instantly family with Kepler. Our moons are trine on this critically important 77 vibration. We're sharing, you might say, the same history. It's almost as if I had a past life there with him. That feeling, which I've had that feeling, I've even had dreams about it. Whether it's literally true or not is not so important, at least to me, but what it does is maybe we have access to all time and space at some level. I don't think it's, for me, not so important to personalize it like that, but it's the feeling of a family connection, a soul connection. In part 1 of this series, I mentioned big highlight in my life is when I visited his birthplace in Germany. It was very important to me. It made a big impression. He had a little computer thing in there at the end of the hallway that he was working with somebody on, that like a calculating machine, and I've been doing the calculating machine on the. It's just this heritage, moon trine moon, and my son bringing it into the current time with this plutonic force. So it's really amazing. If you follow this process of finding the strong vibrations, everything I've explained in this series, in part 1 and this part 2 that we've done, you will see these connections. Oh my goodness, I'm at 43 minutes. I like to stop after a half hour. Let's stop here. We'll pick up from here in part 3 in this series of videos. What we've done in part 2 is we found it. We found the special connection. 77 vibe. I'm on his large pattern, and there's a second pattern that adds depth and breadth to this 77 vibration. And these 2 patterns, the bright yellow one and this light blue highlighted one, are interconnected as well. So it's like 2 parts of one larger system. These energetic systems are not always isolated, discrete things. We have 2 energetic systems, the yellow one and the light blue one, and they are interlocking. They're like 2, wheels that are connected together. So it's 2 parts of one large system. Now we found it. Now we found what the connection is. I'm brought into Kepler's discovery, his invention, he was one of the great people of all time in making discoveries. So I'm brought into that. We have this family depth connection as well, and I continue the heritage. You will find, I'm not bragging or something, you will find exactly the same kinds of things with the people that have influenced you. Incredibly strong ways that you are brought on the train of their lives and their progress. Okay, I need to stop. We're at 45 minutes. Let's continue with this in part 3. Thank you very much, my friends. God bless. Namaste.